don't talk about money or sex in America.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to please welcome my very next guest, Mr. Garrett Gunderson, New York Times bestseller.
Yep.
You got multiple books, though.
I had the Wall Street Journal with a bunch of them, and New York Times with one.
And I think you got one you're working on.
Yeah, I've been working on it for years, man. This is the one that I'm going to put like 20 years of my life into.
All the effort into this one.
And I'm writing all of it.
I've read, one of my favorite ones I've read, which we'll get into a little bit later. But you got the books you've done. You got this incredible company, which I follow your brand, your company, just because I'm so passionate about it. It has a lot to do with money and a lot of misconceptions that are out there in the finance world. So I am absolutely stoked to get in this show with you to dive into all this stuff. But before we do that, I want to give the viewers a little bit of kind of background.
Okay.
You're successful now, super successful, I'd even say, but back us up some. What was it like growing up, Garrett Gunderson? What was it like, that kind of journey, childhood style, if you will?
Well, I grew up in a little town till third grade that had 5,000 people in it at that time, and 2 cops. And last time I went there, it has 1,000 people and 5 cops. So it's not going in the right direction, man.
That's a small town.
East Carbon, Utah.
Okay.
East Carbon, Utah, and then I moved to the big city of Price, Utah in third grade, which was 12,000 people.
Oh,
so really small again, you know. But like that's where, as far as I was concerned,
the first one was that's like an upgrade, you would have been like in a massive city at that point for you.
I was actually scared when I turned 16 to drive in Salt Lake City, how small of a town that really is, but at the time it was intimidating to me, so I grew up in there because my great-grandfather was a coal miner, both my grandfathers and my dad, so all coal miners.
All coal miners.
Yeah, even though I've never stepped foot in a coal mine.
I was going to ask you, nothing to do with them?
No, because like they'll offer good summer jobs as far as pay when you're a kid, and my mom and dad were like, hell no. Yeah. Like I actually told my dad, I want to take my kids and have them see a coal mine. He goes, why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Like he was adamant about it. And I just watched this movie on Netflix called Mine 9, and it's about these 9 miners in West Virginia.
Yep.
And it was emotional to think, like, dude, my dad was a coal miner.
For years, how long? 30 years, whole life?
So when I was in high school, he actually went and got his college degree to become a mine inspector. He thought that would be better. But the problem with mine inspection is there's this thing, the Crandall Canyon mine disaster that happened. And he had to go in, and the shift that he was off, they switched shifts. His really good friend that was staying at his house died in the second mine collapse. So they were trying to rescue the miners. The miners were actually dead, but there was another collapse and it killed the safety workers. And so he has a lot of, like, I think, pain from that kind of thing. And he just never wanted to see me go through being this, like, coal mining worker that it's a tough profession, man.
It's a very, very tough profession. And so you ended up not going to that road, of course.
No, when I was 15, I wanted to earn some money, but I was playing sports. Okay. And my dad was big into sports, so he's like, whatever, let's support you. And he said, if you get good grades, you're going to get this 75 Chevy pickup truck. I mean, I'm small town all the way.
Yeah.
So I started to like clean that thing up, buffer it up, and he's like, hey, you're not bad at this. And when the bosses would come into town, he'd take care of the surface vehicles, he'd clean them up. I started helping him. So when I was 15, I launched a very innovatively named business, Garrett Gunderson's Car Care. That's the best I can come up with, man.
Outside the box.
Yeah. So I had $600 in net income at 15. And went to this thing as a business competition for young entrepreneurs in rural communities. Okay. And I gave a presentation and won $500. So I thought, present and I get $500 or scrub bugs and tar off these vehicles. So I think that was the day I officially became a speaker to a certain degree and more on the entrepreneurial path, because it's cool. I could play sports, I washed cars. I actually had employees because I blew out my knee playing basketball. So I had 3 employees while I was in high school building this little business, and I ended up winning the Young Entrepreneur for the state. And then the SBA Entrepreneur for 30 and under.
Tell me about, it's unique to your story here because you made a statement that your dad supported you in this kind of this entrepreneur car wash and detailing and then speaking, where a lot of times families, as you know, the parents are very go to college, get good grades, and go get a job. And it sounds like your dad kind of said, hey, I'll totally support you in this entrepreneur endeavor, if you will.
Because I was 15. When I started to graduate college,
Okay.
it was a little different story.
Different story, okay.
Because my great-grandfather came over from Italy because he literally couldn't put food on the table.
Right.
Like, his wife was pregnant. He comes to Sunnyside, Utah, and he becomes a goat herder because there was a mine disaster.
Okay.
And then it takes him 7 years to save up enough money to get into a home and not live in a tent anymore and get his family to come over. So there's a lot of scarcity that gets born in that. Like, I kind of think like they're doing everything they can to avoid the shackles of poverty, and they just get stuck in the shackles of scarcity, right?
For sure, yeah.
And so when I decided, I think I'm gonna get into finance, I'm 19 years old, and I did an internship, which is like a glorified statement of, hey, bring your family and friends so we can peddle on mutual funds and life insurance. Right. So for a few years I'm doing that.
You were a lead gen, basically.
Yeah, I was a lead gen. Like, hey, just bring your people in, and we'll quote what the past performance was or whatever. And then as I'm going to graduate, it's 1999. I'm getting offered jobs at Anderson, which is no longer around, right? Yep. Merrill Lynch, decimated. American Investment Bank didn't make it. But they saw that as like, hey, these are big offers.
Sure.
You should go take these jobs. Strong Investments, they were the #2 fund family at the time. They don't exist anymore. And it was probably the most depressed I've been for 6 months when I was graduating, because they really wanted me to go that route. They thought it was safe and secure. But I actually had a professor, the dean of the college for business, goes, "You're making more than your professors. Why are you listening to them? And just pursue this financial thing that you're doing." And my family eventually supported me with that, especially considering in 2001, it was my first year out of college and in business, I got one paycheck that was more than any of my family had made in a year. And I showed my grandpa, because he was my hero. Not to brag, but to let him know it would be okay. And he actually grabbed my shoulder, got teary-eyed, and he's like, "I'm really proud of you." And I think he kind of felt like I'd changed the course of our family moving forward. So it was a really proud moment for me.
That's unique, man. Our kind of backstories there are very similar. And I did the exact same thing, where my parents were educators and wanted to go to education and so forth. And I did not go to that path, went to college but didn't go it. And then I got that check. I'll never forget that check, which was literally more than I made in a year.
Right.
And we had a big meeting, and I showed my family, and it went from, you're a nut job, you can't believe you're going to go down this path of not secure job of teaching, into, like you said, it's all, my father almost like gave me his blessing. It was like, you know what, you can't go do this, never mind. Don't take my advice, you should go that way now.
My grandpa and my mom were probably the most afraid of that path. And it's crazy because they were really proud about what I had done, but then I still got into a cash flow crunch in the future. And they actually funneled money into my account to support me to get through it. So
what do you think, I know you got a lot of history back on the immigration side with your family coming from Italy, like you said, using tents and so forth. Do you think that's influenced a lot of your kind of entrepreneur drive and desire to succeed so much, to try to lift the whole family kind of out of that immigrant scarcity mindset?
Well, my grandfather, definitely the hero in my life.
Yeah.
Even though he was a coal miner, he had 2 side businesses. He had a TV repair shop. Remember those Zenith TVs, like a huge piece of
big
furniture?
Old boxes, Right,
and then he was in a band, played the accordion, very Italian, right?
I love it.
And they would go on the weekends and play weddings and stuff like that. And so he would take me along on the TV calls, he called them, where I'd go and he'd fix the TV, and people like pay him, but they'd also be like making him enchiladas, and like he was friends with all of them. And so that was fascinating to me. And so I really do feel like when I first started, I was such a miser, and so were they. They actually kept money in coffee cans.
Wow.
In the cellar. And I still talk about it, like sometimes I'm like, why is the lights on? Like, it doesn't matter, but in my mind there's still a little bit of that. It comes from that immigrant mindset. And one summer, we just took the whole summer off as a family and went to Italy. And we spent the whole summer there. And I thought, like, we went to all these places, Verona and Venice, and, we stayed in Tuscany. And I thought, man, my family from Italy probably never even visited these places.
And lived there.
And here we are, not that long later. 1913, he comes over here, and we did that in like 2017. I'm thinking, what a different world, what a different life. Like, he made a bold move, and it helped us get kind of out of poverty, but I thought my bold move was like, we're gonna live a high quality of life. We're not gonna live in fear. We're not gonna like succumb to like, oh, you just gotta conform and do what everyone else does so that you could be safe and preserve everything you have by pinching pennies. It was like, that's no way to live.
Right.
And I really feel like I've made an impact on my family, and that's the first and foremost place.
Yeah, I love, we were talking about earlier, right before we were sitting here, talking about history. and I love studying history. And one of the coolest things is what you're talking about, how much someone like your grandfather and great-grandfather made these moves that we think, hey, the business that we're doing is like this way risky, crazy, we're gonna go out on this limb and start this business. Yeah, but our grandfathers and great-grandfathers literally like got on a boat with nothing, came over, lived in tents. To me, how are you considering what I'm doing as a risk? Like to me, their sacrifice and their entrepreneurial drive just to go do that is massive, way bigger than what the risk that I take. I feel
he didn't even speak English.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So they changed his name at Ellis Island because they couldn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah,
it was Iaquinto. They changed it to Quinto just because the lack of, and he's just coming over here not speaking English.
Like if you think about that, who could imagine doing that in today's age and
hiking and then getting on a boat, like.
It's unheard of. It's crazy.
Dude, I start complaining if my flight's delayed. Like, what, you know? I mean,
That's awesome, man. I love the history there. Give the viewers here a little bit about Wealth Factory. This is your business you have right now.
Yeah.
Which I am a huge supporter of. Love Wealth Factory. I don't support everybody's business that come on the show. Everybody does different businesses, but I love Wealth Factory. Give us a little bit overview of what that business is.
We're here to liberate 1 million people to become economically independent.
Yeah.
Economic independence is having enough recurring revenue from assets or entrepreneurial-based income that doesn't require their everyday management to cover their basic expenses. Because when they do, they can swing for the fences in their vision. So Wealth Factory is brilliant at helping people keep more of what they make without budgeting.
Yeah.
So we're very efficient at helping them save on tax, save on interest, save on insurance costs that are duplicate or improperly structured, or on investments that are non-performing or taking too much risk or have fees that are kind of like holding them back. So we're like financial detectives that way.
Yeah.
Help them get their financial house in order, help them get totally organized, and then even support them in growing their business.
But I want to make sure I have some clarity here, is that it's not your typical standard get your house in order as far as the typical standard budgeting.
No budgeting.
Penny pinching, don't go out to eat, don't do anything, which is taught a lot, which from my perspective, I'm kind of against the concept. Part of it is because, dude, we have one life to live. I want to enjoy it, and I want my kids to enjoy it, my family to enjoy it, so forth. But you're the opposite of that kind of philosophy.
Yeah, because look, we want to help people build a life they love.
Yeah, exactly.
And ultimately, I think the society's kind of gotten this trap where it's like, I'm going to do things I don't enjoy doing, so that one day I can live this life that I want. But it starts to become behavior that's like, it's so detrimental, and it almost becomes something that it becomes part of the individual, so they never kind of shake it. So we're not in the budgeting world. It doesn't mean that we're not responsible financially. We show them how to create automation through a process called mindful cash management.
Okay.
And some of the simplicity of paying yourself first, but not by reducing lifestyle. No one shrinks their way to wealth. Budgeting creates a reductionist thinking, but we want to get them in a production thinking. So we actually help them differentiate expenses. If there's anything destructive, let's get rid of it. Is there anything that's lifestyle? Just pay cash for it. Are there protective expenses like asset protection and insurance and transfer risk? Let's address that. And then most importantly, productive expenses. What happens when you put in $1 and more than $1 comes out? Why would you budget that? Keep doing it while it's still effective. And then as you start to expand your means, that's the best way to live within them, not cutting back and restricting and eliminating, because ultimately you don't get a second chance to build a life you love and create a legacy that lasts, I
call a lot of this offense versus defense when it comes to money, right? It seems like so many people, especially here in America, right, that I talk to, you talk to, it's a very defensive approach to money, where with wealth, I feel like it's a lot of offensive approach with defense tied into it versus a defensive approach with no offense, or very little offense, which I think most Americans kind of have that philosophy. And it kind of sounds like what you're talking about there as well. And you wrote this book that I want to talk about called Budgeting Sucks, which is a great title of a book, Budgeting Sucks. What is that book about?
So Budgeting Sucks is about finding money that's rightfully yours.
Yeah.
And it really breaks it down into 3 categories. Number 1, the best thing you could do is learn to make more money.
Okay.
So how do you do that in a substantial way? By adding more value. So we show people where their hidden capital is. Their mental capital and their relationship capital. You were talking about it before we started the show, relationship capital. How do you build these relationships in a deep and meaningful way? Because that's going to expand your wealth. And the mental capital is investing in yourself, where you really discover the most important tools, strategies, insights, and structures that add value to people's lives. So we show them that first so they could make more money. Then second, how do they keep more money? We call it the 4 I's to efficiency. pay less to the IRS legally and ethically.
Right.
And there's a lot less that people could pay if they just knew how to navigate it.
Absolutely.
Second is pay less interest. There's a whole 3R process, and right now with interest rates so low, how do they get the lowest interest rate so they're paying less to the institutions? Third is the investments that they have. I don't think a lot of people do a good job at managing the downside risk, and that's the first priority.
Okay.
But the second is when there's non-performing fees that seem inconsequential, someone will be like, oh, well, it's less than 1% of a fee. Well, here's the deal. 100 grand over the next 30 years at 10% grows to $1.74 million. If it only earns 9.2% because of fees that aren't actually adding to the bottom line, grows to $1.4 million. That's a $340,000 cost of money that we could find and put back in their life. And the fourth thing is that insurance. Where's our duplicate coverages, improper structure, and what ways can we transfer catastrophic risk rather than things that are inconsequential? So that's the second part of the book, is how they keep more. And then the third is how do you make more money with your money? People try to skip to that step too quickly, but one of the things we talk about in Budgeting Sucks is your investor DNA. So investor DNA is what are your core values, core competencies, and core drivers so that you understand how to become a better investor. And you actually focus instead of diversify, because that focus, like Andrew Carnegie, who I know you admire, he said, I put all my eggs in one basket and watch it like a hawk.
Yep.
And so if we really want to grow wealth, it's about how do you create the right focus and then create downside protection, and that's where you get exponential growth that can happen in 3 years or 7 years or within 10 years rather than 30 years and not know if it's going to work out. That whole notion of set it and forget it, invest early, often, and always, and that if you just live off rice and beans and 30 years from today, that is a failed financial system that I'm kind of pissed about, honestly, and I'm passionate about in Budgeting Sucks, helping people reclaim their cash, take back control of their personal finances, and find money so they don't have to lower their lifestyle.
Man, so you went through like 50 items I want to jump on right now, and I'm trying to think, man, I'm going to have to do 19 different shows with you to get all this out.
Hey, man, this is close to my house, so I like that you've made it so convenient for me.
I built this for you, actually, okay?
I really appreciate that, man.
But, dude, there was so much knowledge you just dropped right there that I think the majority of people just don't even understand that it's there. Mm-hmm. So let's back up a little bit. I can't go through all of it with you. Which let me first just say this: if someone right now, when you just went off that tyrant right there, which I love, and that passion comes out, and you can see it, and you can't fake the passion when you find that what inspires you. And I love that, dude. But just real quick, if someone wants to get more information from you on what you just talked about, where can they go to get more information right now?
BudgetingSucks.com.
BudgetingSucks with an S.com. We'll put it on the screen. BudgetingSucks.com was that whole concept you just went through right there. Let's dive into a little bit of it to get some more content here on it. Man, there's so many pieces. I'm trying to choose which one I want to talk about.
Let me give context to the whole thing in your first thing where you're talking about people get stuck in kind of this game called playing not to lose.
Okay.
And there's two shadow personas around money. These are almost like a money personality that happens when people get stuck in playing not to lose. The first one is the miser. The miser plays a game called preservation, right? This is where my family was. And what they end up doing is they get addicted to holding on to what they have so they can never enjoy it. I mean, misers will spend 10 hours to save $3.
Yep.
They're not valuing their time. They don't even invest money. That's the coffee can mentality. It's like, what can we reduce, eliminate, cut? And it's really kind of a tough existence because it's not very fun. Actually, my favorite thing that a miser would do is like go buy nickels, because if you melt them, they're worth more than 5 cents.
Right.
Like I literally met a miser, that's what they did.
Yep.
When I was a miser, I'm admitting I was a miser because that's where I came from.
Italian family, sure.
Okay, so I go first Christmas when I'm married.
Yeah.
I buy my wife a refurbished phone.
Okay.
And a case that doesn't fit the phone because it's on sale.
Okay.
So she opens the gift and she's like, the phone starts ringing and she's like trying to answer it, but it has to flip it down and the case won't let her do it. And she's like, what is this? Like when I was a miser and we're getting married, my father-in-law goes, hey, if you want to live rent-free, you can live in the basement. So I go tell my wife, I'm like, dude, your dad said we could live in the basement rent-free. She goes, sex-free too, you jackass. And I was like, okay, but that's the miser. It's just all elimination.
But which one did you choose? Like I know which one you chose.
I said, here's $400 a month to go get an apartment. And then she showed me there's actually a ghetto in Utah. Didn't know it, found it though, and I was like, okay, we'll go to 600. I was still a miser, right? So then the second kind of playing not to lose persona that comes out is the conservative, and it's not to do with a political affiliation.
Right.
The conservative plays a game called accumulation. Okay. They believe if you can just wait long enough, the best things come to those who wait. They'll wait 30 years. They're going to fund their retirement plan. They just set it and forget it into mutual funds, and they're kind of like know-it-alls, and they're almost condescending. If you don't follow their plan, you're not going to be okay in the future. They think entrepreneurship is risky because it's all about getting good grades and setting that money aside and investing for the long haul. They'll delay gratification and they'll delay happiness, but they'll end up with funds that they never spend because they're always worried about will it last.
Right.
And so it's a really kind of miserable situation. So that's the two shadow personas playing not to lose. Now on the other side is still this kind of like money personas that are limiting. So think of like money personas like there's the ego, and there's two ways the ego operates when it's confronted: fight or flight.
Okay.
Flight is the play not to lose. Hey, we're hiding from our problems. We're just trying to squirrel up as much money as I can. And then the other side is the fight, which is kind of the run from the problems. And this is the play to win. And play to win sometimes, like entrepreneurs wear it as like a badge or a moniker saying, yeah, I'm playing to win. But the reality is they rarely win because there's one called the striver. And the striver's all about status. But the problem is they burn out, because all they know is work. When I was a striver, and that was probably the time I've spent the most in as a striver.
All right.
Like people are like, hey, you live in Utah, what are your hobbies? I'm like, business. Like, what do you do for fun? I want a business. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and it was always just, more, and it was exhausting to be around me because it was just like the next, never celebrating the win. And then the last kind of shadow persona in play to win is the high roller.
Okay.
And so the high roller is addicted to opportunity, but the problem is they cut corners and take unnecessary risk, and so they win big and they lose big.
Okay.
They win big and they lose big. And so these are 4 losing games of what I would call the consumer condition. The consumer condition is a place where people put money above all else.
Okay.
They don't have room for quality of life, and it's always a game of more. They just play it differently, either socking it away, putting it away for 30 years, earning more. I can always earn more, but they're on the entrepreneurial treadmill, or looking for the next deal. And the problem is none of it has room for fulfillment. But the good news is the same characteristics, if applied in the winning personas, actually create a much better life.
Yeah.
So the winning persona says, hey, look, money is important, but it's one benchmark. We got to look at this quality of life benchmark.
Okay.
We got to look at fulfillment benchmark. We got to look at a life that we love benchmark. We got to look at like, what's this whole thing about? And you can flip those personas if you move to value creation rather than selfishness.
Okay.
If you look to how you serve others and solve problems, vision, creating a vision bigger than your problems, you've got a lot, like you've got vision.
Right.
You are oozing with vision, right?
It's my
So when
game.
you create this amazing vision, you bring other people along.
Right.
So when it becomes about value creation and vision, and then really cultivating that hidden capital that I talked about with budgeting sucks, then you can flip from the losing personas to the winning personas.
Okay.
So the miser becomes a mindful manager. Like in an organization, if you get a mindful manager, they look for where can we eliminate waste? Where can we be more resourceful?
Right.
What things might, not be being paid attention to, that we could plug the leaks and put more money in your pocket? They're the ones that are going to say, we can save on tax, we can save on interest, right? So that's just that they're not looking at just their budget, they're looking at the value they provide for others.
So they're going from a miser,
right?
When they make this flip, right?
Yep,
I've said this
the
right.
flip.
They make this flip from these 4 personas to these 4 personas, if you will.
Exactly.
They're making this flip from a miser into a mindful manager.
Right.
And they're going to focus on some of those I's you had talked about on saving. And this
Yep.
is when they flip from, it's not about money as much as about value of life, value of time, value of my
Money
family.
becomes the byproduct.
Gotcha, okay.
You're still mindful of it, but it's a part of the equation, not the only part of the equation.
Right, not the answer of it.
Right, and so think of it like the mindful manager, rather than only thinking selfishly, is just thinking about like, how could I contribute? What's my vision? What is my purpose? And as they start to consider that, they start to add more value to other people, and the more people you add value to, the more scalable, the more leverageable, the more money that can be made. So dollars follow value. Add more value, dollars follow. So the conservative flips into the planner.
The planner.
So we went on an office tour, you're like, oh, here's a CFO. CFO is a lot of times a planner.
Sure.
They've got pro formas, they're looking at like, how would this all work? How do we implement it? What's our bandwidth? Do the numbers make sense? Like they really strategically help us crazy entrepreneurs that are thinking of all these ideas, execute it on the ground, so it actually doesn't just turn into a dream that people go, oh yeah, it's a dreamer, but it's like a visionary that we actually see it come to fruition.
Yeah,
so that's the planner, right?
So the conservative turns into a planner.
Okay. Right? Value creation, vision, service, solving problems, and developing their skill sets, essentially. Yeah. The striver becomes the creator.
The creator. Okay.
Right? The creator's an innovator. They have ingenuity and think of new ways to do things. When I was filming an origin story with my family, where I came from, and my 9-year-old son was on video, and then my wife was on video, and she said, you know what, when Garrett graduated college, there wasn't a job for him, so he just invented one. And my son goes, what do you mean he invented one? Well, he's an entrepreneur. He just invented one. He created a new process to help people keep their money. He's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. So that's the creator side. It's almost like businesses, we're like an artist and business is just a canvas to add value to people.
Right.
We're not constrained or limited by what's already been done. We invent when we're creators. And then the high roller becomes the catalyst, which I think is the rarest of all personas. And the catalyst is that person that goes, have you met so-and-so? You guys should connect.
Yeah.
And if you guys connect, I bet there's some things you guys do together. And they're the movers and shakers that bring people, and they're like the advocates. They're like you're being a catalyst. You're like, dude, I love your books. I want to tell people about it. This show is a form of being a catalyst for me to have this platform that I could springboard the message to.
Right.
So when we flip with value creation, when we flip with vision that's bigger than our own problems, and we start thinking, especially if they're economically independent, how do we go out there? Because we don't have to work for money tomorrow. We choose to do what we do, and money is something that serves us as a byproduct of that value so that we have this fuel to continue things moving forward. Those are the winning games.
Yeah. Dude, there's chapters and chapters and chapters deep into that cake you're baking right there that I want to go down. For sake of time, I think I'm going to move from that begrudgingly because there's so much stuff I want to dive in there. And I love the switch of high roller to catalyst and the conservative to creator. And a lot of it has to do with, I can see that playing into entrepreneurship world as well as into financial world into it as well.
And the game is to collaborate.
Yeah.
Because if you're a catalyst and you find a creator and you find a planner and you find a mindful manager, you're going to go a lot further.
Right.
And so it's just that we don't all have the same skills. So if we try to do things alone, we burn out.
Right.
We hit the ceiling. We try really hard but don't get the results we want. We say, oh, I don't have time for my family. I don't have time for my health. Well, that's when we're taking on too much by ourselves.
Yeah. How much, on that point there, how much do you think is success in life and success in business, entrepreneurship, a team sport versus individual sport?
To me, it's so much about the team because now the rare commodity is the vision. It's the rarest commodity on the planet. When people create a compelling vision that's so exciting that other people want to be part of it, and I think a vision's a vision when it's beyond your existing financial resources, when it's beyond your existing abilities and your existing time. That's a real vision because then it means the team comes in and its other resources start to show up. Other abilities start to become part of that. But it's the vision, it's the container that really defines all that. And no one wins alone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a win by yourself, it's kind of a lonely place to be.
Right.
And yeah, I think there's a lot of messaging out there, which is like, if you just hustle, it's all going to work out. Hustle could become the very thing that's your initial gift that eventually becomes the curse. It becomes the burnout. Look, we're filming in a place where I had 2 business partners die at the airport close by here.
Right.
We had a private plane, it crashed into Utah Lake, and I got trapped in this losing game of I got to keep everything together, and I took on way too much on my own. I gained 25 pounds, and after 4 months from their time that they died, I couldn't even make the simplest of decisions.
Yeah.
My assistant came in and said, hey, you're double booked the next hour, what do you want to do? Right now, I can give you 100 strategies of how we handle that without even having to think. I literally started to sweat and sat down because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
And so we have what's called diminishing marginal productivity. We put in so much that if we keep doing too much alone, then we start spending more time and getting less result. And I think that that's the detriment of those kind of shadow personas, is it's an isolated me versus you, us versus them, wrong versus right, versus like, how do we come together for the bigger picture? How do we all contribute to that bigger picture? And that, the team game for me. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you this because for me, growing up, I've always kind of naturally fit into that visionary role where, dude, sometimes I feel like I live so far out with these, and you define it very well in that a great vision is something that I can't even do by myself.
Right.
And I'll give you a great example.
It's just a goal if you can do it by yourself.
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
goal.
So I can put it on a to-do list, break it down into sections and go do it. And a great example is literally the show. Like this was something that was more of a vision, but it took a lot of people to come together to make it actually come to fruition, right? And I love the definition that you gave of a vision. One thing I want to ask you about, because you're a visionary as well, is sometimes where I struggled a lot being a visionary was properly communicating that vision to others in the sense of I could kind of paint a picture, but it can never always come down until, and for me, how I solved it was, I think in your definitions, I think is what I got was maybe a creator, maybe is a term, if I'm putting in the right boat. What's for me was Eddie, which runs Empire, which you met earlier. And he was one of those guys that came along and said, okay, this is your vision, and here's how we're gonna kind of get there with that vision. If not, some of my visions were just dreams, because they never ended up happening.
So many documentaries are out there where you're like, okay, how did Jay-Z become a billionaire? Well, here's the man behind Jay-Z that executed everything. Right? So dreamer versus visionary is who you partner with.
Yeah, it's a great terminology, I like that.
And I really feel like, it's if you have a compelling vision, people are excited to support it.
They want to be part of it.
They want to be part of it.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if you don't have an exciting vision, you're like, it's so hard to hire. And it's like, well, check your vision. Think value. Is it compelling? Is it exciting? Is it something like, for a long time, the US was like, we want to be the best space program. We're going to be the best space program. But nobody knew what that meant.
Right.
Then JFK's like, we're going to land a man on the moon and return him safely home within the decade. People start showing up.
Now I had a definition at a point. Yep, where we're headed.
We don't know how to do it.
Right.
We don't have all the resources right now.
I didn't give you that.
But with hidden capital, I think most of the problems that exist in the world can be solved with the people that are on this planet if they can overcome their scarcity around money. What happens is they limit their mental capital because they don't know what to do with it. They don't develop relationship capital because they're trying to do everything alone. And I have a thing called the value equation. It's mental capital times relationship capital equals financial capital. So if you want more money, it's simply about more value, because the bridge between mental and relationship capital is business. Business just says, how do we serve others, solve problems, and reach them? Because they don't have all their own answers, and other people do.
Right.
So if we can utilize expertise, we can accomplish more. I once decided stupidly I was going to do a triathlon.
Okay.
I had a radio show, so I announced it because my co-host was like doing Ironman triathlons, and the problem is I don't know how to swim.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it.
So that's a great idea. By the way, when I was going to do the triathlon, I've been training 5 days a week with swimming, because I'm like, that's the one part I feel like I could die with.
Yeah.
And so I'm about to get in the water, and my sister runs up and hands me a phone. She's like, Mom needs to talk to you. I'm like, hey, what's up? She's like, I feel like you're going to drown. Maybe you should drop out of the race. I'm like, thanks for the pep talk, Mom. And I did the swimming anyway. But when I went to buy a bike, I'd never bought a triathlon bike. I just had a Huffy.
Right.
It's like $100 at Walmart, right?
Totally different, yeah.
$4,700 at first. I'm like, this is expensive.
Yeah.
But then a second, I got like, how long would it take me to make this? Oh, I would never be able to. One, I don't have the skill set, so it would take a lifetime. Or I can just add some value somewhere else.
Right.
And that's extremely efficient and inexpensive when we think about that. And so when you think about exchange, exchange is when one person can do something more effectively than another, and I can engage those services, that actually exchange creates wealth. So said this way, like if you bought that book from me for $20, like that book cost me a lot more than $20 of lessons, of time. And if you get one thing out of that that's helpful, it's gonna be worth way more than $20. The book's worth less than $20 to me because I already have it in my mind. So if you buy that for $20 and I sell it to you, we both agree that the price it's not worth is $20, because you're saying it's worth more and I'm saying it's worth less. So we both end up winning in that exchange if we both chose to do that. So exchange creates wealth because we have unequal abilities or different skill sets. And if we choose to exchange with one another, money is just a super efficient tool for us to do that together.
Right.
And when we do that, the more times money exchanges, the more wealth is created. Wealth isn't a finite game, it's an infinite game. That even if there's a limited amount of money, they're putting it on computer screens as we do the show,
digits,
right? But the more times it exchanges hands, the more wealth is created.
Right.
So it's not a finite resource like a pie, that if one person has a piece, there's not, for another.
Right.
No, it's like the more times it exchanges hands. So value creation is this catalyst for visionaries. Value creation is a solution for anyone that's stuck financially, because they're just one relationship or one idea away from the next level of prosperity. But if they just feel like it's trading time for money, or they just feel like it's a game that's rigged against them, they lose.
Right. I love this concept you're talking about. I refer to it as money movement. When it comes to wealth building, kind of like opposite of the, you said the miser, and opposite of the, what was the second one? Not the conservative.
And then,
kind of opposite of them. And to me, when it comes to wealth, money has to constantly flow. Money has to move constantly, and the more that it moves, which is what you're referring to there, the more money can be created as that money moves. When you find a lot of kind of broke people financially, A lot of times, if you go study their money, it's because they're not moving it. They're doing the opposite of moving it. They're holding it, conserving it, burying it, whatever it may be. And until that money starts to move and create that movement, wealth is very, very hard to come by, if not impossible, actually.
And I think that, unfortunately, a terrible number of financial books are giving the opposite advice.
Yeah.
So most financial books are about this notion of accumulation, which is a belief that if you want wealth, it's a factor of three things. Number one, how much money can you sock away? Right? It's the notion of it takes money to make money. By the way, when people tell you it takes money to make money, they just want your money. Like, does it take money for banks to make money? No, they have other people give them a deposit of like, and they might say, we'll pay you 0.25%.
Right.
So imagine if this was a real estate deal. They're saying, hey, we're gonna pay $250 for rent to rent this place, but we're gonna sell that for $3,000 to someone because they're saying they're gonna mortgage for 3%. That's a massive markup. It doesn't take their money to make money. They're telling you it takes your money for them to make money. And so people get separated from their money all the time. So that's the first notion of accumulation is money. The second is rate of return. And erroneously, a lot of people feel high risk equals high return because they look at an entrepreneur and think it's risky, but you actually know how to mitigate risk. Really good entrepreneurs know how to mitigate risk through cash flow. How do I create cash flow immediately? Like my money management philosophy really comes down to four things. Number one, how do you make money on the buy? If you have cash and someone's distressed, you can make money from day one. You can buy it. Number two, how can you cash flow from day one? If you're cash flow positive, you've already won the game, right? The third is plugging the leaks with efficiency, right? Because if you save on those, that's an immediate boost to return. And number four is if you create economic independence or your assets are kicking off enough cash flow to cover your basic expenses, you get choice in every matter. And by the way, most of the world's trying to save 10% of their money to earn 10% on that money, which is kind of a pipe dream in the market. I'm saying, why don't we get 100% of your money going into building assets because you're economically independent? You're 10 times better off because you're not required to do something the next day to survive. And most people get stuck in survival. So ultimately, you know, wealth is money times rate, and some people think high risk equals high return, which means risk defined as chance of loss. High risk equals higher chance of loss. And then the third component is time. And this is where people are gonna get a little bit uneasy as I say this, but compound interest is the best tool for making the banks rich and the worst tool for the individual to get rich. Because compound interest doesn't do anything in the first 10 years. It's a very slow, anemic pace. It's always, that exponential growth is from 20 to 30. The world's gonna be so different 30 years from now. Do you think that the companies that people are buying in the S&P 500 are even gonna exist? And so if they think that 30 years from today, if they just set money aside, take risk with it, and maybe diversify to minimize some of the risk, you and I have an opinion about that, and then they wait long enough, it's gonna work out. It's not. Because the real notion is velocity. And velocity just says if we take the GDP, which is the gross domestic product for an economy, divide it by the money supply, it tells us velocity. How many times did dollars exchange hands? So personal velocity is just your personal output divided by your input. And how do we increase output without increasing inputs? Because adding more money, if we go back to the school of long division, if you put a higher number in the bottom, it spits out a lower number.
A lower number, yep.
Right? So we got to keep the input fixed, but increase output. How do we do that? Two ways. One is efficiency. We've talked about it now third time, right? Save on tax, save on interest, save on investments that are not performing, the cost of that, and on insurance costs. So we want to be more efficient. But second is expanding our means or creating scale or leverage. So how do we get more productivity or output with the same resources? That's through vision. That's through value creation. That's either reaching more people or it's more deeply impacting the people we already reach. And if we can play that game of velocity, it's about cash flow instead of accumulation. It's about focus instead of diversification. It's about, really taking back control of our finances and not just handing it over and hoping it's all gonna work out, because I'm gonna spoil, it's not.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, if you read The Millionaire Next Door and you think that's a good book, you're going to be destined to a life of scarcity, that you never spend your money because you're either the miser or the conservative, and your heirs are going to blow it within 16 months of your death.
Yeah.
It's a crappy deal.
I want to talk about, I want to go a little bit more in depth here with you.
Yeah.
Right now we're talking a lot about philosophy, viewpoints of money,
cool.
Right? Which is the opposite of what pretty much everybody comes up with, which is what you're talking about here. I want to go a little bit deeper with one of these things, a topic you just mentioned, which is on the tax side. You talk about efficiency and saving money, or being more efficient, plugging the gaps, if you will. And taxes to me is a huge one. because I think people totally misunderstand how much they're actually paying in taxes in general. And so you've got some great perspective and concepts with taxes and how to overcome that the legal, ethical way. Talk to us a little bit more, maybe not how to, but a little bit more in depth on how does someone go about fixing the problem of taxes that they may have right now?
Okay, so if they just draw 2 vertical lines, so we have 3 boxes. There's 3 boxes for tax. Number 1 is team. Number 2 is deductions. And number 3 is reclassification.
Okay, so give to get teams.
Team, deductions, and reclassification.
Okay.
So let me break down the team. Depending on your situation, you need between 1 and 4 people on your team.
Okay.
The first person on the team would be either a bookkeeper, a controller, or a CFO, depending on the size, right? And some people try to do that on their own and they don't like it, so that, if you don't get timely data, you overpay the government. That's the bottom line.
Right.
Second part of the team is a tax strategist. Now, a lot of CPAs are more historians than strategists. They go, here's what you owe based upon the numbers you gave me. That's just historically looking back. A strategist is going to meet with you every quarter and analyze what other things can we be doing and navigating to minimize the taxes. So they're really responsible for that second bucket of deductions. The third person is an attorney. So if you're a business owner, an attorney is either going to be a corporate attorney if you're doing less than $1 million in revenue, or a tax attorney if you're doing more. Tax attorneys probably bring me 2/3 of my tax deduction, not deduction, but tax reduction strategies. And then number 4 is, with the commercial real estate you do, an engineer. You might need a cost segregation engineer if you own commercial property so you can accelerate your depreciation. But you want all 4 of those people on a phone call at least once a quarter, so you could proactively navigate what's going on with your income, what strategies are being unveiled, especially like in 2017, they changed the rules so massively. There's something called Section 199A. And if a business owner doesn't know about 199A, they overpaid their taxes. And not by a little, by a lot. But you know what? It took until October of 2017 for most accounting firms to even understand and grasp what it was. It's the pass-through deduction for a business owner that originally was like, hey, if you're a business, we're going to give you a 15% tax rate. It ended up being Section 199A that said, hey, we can get you down to maybe 22%, but you have to run it through one of 2 formulas, which are complicated and a pain, so you need the right people to do it. So meeting with them quarterly, and then here's another big thing, every 3 years going back to see if you missed anything. So a lot of things people miss is R&D credits. If anyone's built software or an app or customized a website or a CRM, they can actually get tax credits above and beyond what their expenses were if they kept it in the country that they did the work, right? So if you're a U.S. citizen and you did this in the Philippines, it doesn't count, but anyone, including your own time. So this is something that I see business owners get money back for all the time. This thing's kind of phasing out, but there was something called Section 199, which is different than 199A, called domestic production credits. So if you ever had to do researching real estate and things like that, you can get net revenue credits off of those projects for doing the research. Or, there's a number of things that you can kind of go back and amend your returns. I've been able to amend my returns twice. Once after my partners died and I just was not meeting every quarter and doing this stuff. And another time I had domestic production credits with the books that I wrote. So these were substantial amounts of money that I got back from the IRS that people are like, well, you worried about being audited? No, they actually review it and then send the check based upon the document. We've never had anyone have an issue because we're not doing anything illegal. You just stay within the law. Okay, the second category, deductions. Just 2 things to do there. If you own a business, you go, hey, can I relate this to my business? And number 2, can I document that? If you do those 2 things, you can get major deductions. And 2 easy ones people miss all the time. The Augusta rule. I know that, you live right there close to Augusta. You can rent your house out 14 days to your business. That's tax deductible to the business. So you could, if you happen to film from there, if you happen to have an employee retreat or an executive thing or a mastermind or whatever it might be, you can rent that out and then you don't have to pay tax on it on the personal income side.
And that's different from the normal where people write off the 33% or whatever.
Yeah, this isn't home office.
This is a totally different concept.
You can still take home office
rule,
deduction.
which I think most people don't know about the Augusta rule, which is I use all the time. 14 I use my house all the time. It's 14 days of deductions I get basically.
And then another thing is you can pay your kids. If you have kids, you can pay them $12,200 a year. That's tax deductible to the business, tax free to them. So just there's like hundreds of deductions we can go through there. We have some cool guides we can give to help people with that. But the third category is the big one.
Let me pause right there. If someone wanted a cool guide that you just talked about, I'm sure people are watching now wanting it. Where could they go to get a cool guide?
Wealthfactory.com/tax.
Wealth Factory,
Yeah.
which is your website, your company,
Yep.
wealthfactory.com/tax. So we'll get on the screen here for you, wealthfactory.com/tax.
Yeah,
And there'll be some guides
32
there for you.
ideas on how to hire your kids, things around the Augusta rule, like a lot of the details to what I'm talking about here.
Love it.
I think we have 350 tax ideas in the guide.
Love it.
So the third category is the big one, reclassification.
Yep.
Reclassification is 4 things. Number 1, turn active income into passive income for tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you happen to own a commercial building, charge yourself the highest possible rent for comparables. That comes through as a 1099 versus W-2, so you avoid self-employment tax or Medicare, Medicaid, and all that. It could be anywhere from a minimum of 3.2% savings to a maximum of 15.3%, just because you set yourself 2 checks instead of 1.
Right.
The second one is ordinary income turning into capital gains. Capital gains can be 0%, 15, or 20%, versus as high as 37.5%. So if you do business internationally, you can set up an international sales corporation, take all your international receipts into that corporation, you pay capital gains instead of ordinary income. ICD, ISC. I use something called the captive insurance agency. I don't recommend it for most people because it does increase your chance of audit, and you have to do all the steps appropriately, which 9 out of 10 unfortunately don't.
It's a big level, man.
So I'd be really careful with it, but you put money in that pre-tax.
Yep.
When you take it out, it's capital gains.
Love it. Love that one.
Yep. So the third one is tax-free.
Yeah.
I'll give 2 tax-free strategies. One is a charitable remainder trust. Any highly appreciated
CRTs.
capital gain asset, you can donate to a charity. You get a partial tax deduction. When you sell it, it's tax-free. And then you're the first beneficiary. The charity's the second. They keep whatever's left over when you're dead, which the aim is 10%. So who loses? The government. I'm cool with that. You end up, having more money at work. So that's good. Another thing is if you're a C corporation, there's something called the 1202. You can sell your business up to $10 million tax-free if it qualifies. It has to be around for at least 5 years, no earlier than sometime in the 80s, but $10 million, no tax. So that's kind of cool.
But you got to be a C Corp for qualifying
C Corp.
for that one.
You can always convert, and
Yep,
there are
from
some
S to
rules
C,
to
yep.
look at. And the fourth one I know you do, because we shared this story before as I got a tour of the office, tax arbitrage.
Yeah.
A lot of people make this mistake of letting the tax tail wag the dog.
Yeah.
They go, I'm going to go buy something and spend $1 to save 37 cents.
Yep.
You end up losing 60 plus cents doing that.
Your math was off on that
Yeah,
one.
I'm like,
their math was, yeah.
You better make sure that if you spend $1 for tax purposes, you get more than $1 back.
Right. Not
Tax
37
arbitrage
cents.
is that. So I'll just share 2 examples there. Again, these are just to give people concrete examples and plant seeds, but there's a lot more that you could do, and not all these are the perfect strategy for just any
For everybody,
right?
yes.
I'm not a CPA, blah, 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 all those disclosures.
We'll put that at
right?
the bottom.
Yeah, see
not
that.
your financial advisor,
Yeah, go
not
to
your
yeah.
CPA.
So one strategy is, in 2006, I bought millions of dollars of artwork for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And after 3 years, I donated it. For every $1 I spent, I got $2 back.
Right.
So that's tax arbitrage.
Yep.
Second one was I did a conservation easement.
Yep.
Owned a bunch of land, I forfeit the development rights because it's property I'd never want to develop. I get a huge tax advantage for that, forfeiting that. So those are arbitrage strategies. There's a lot more. Historic easements, restricted property trusts, there's a lot there. But there's so much that can be done around tax. So much. And you have no bigger expense
Right.
that's a non-productive expense. I mean, I'm not really happy with what happens with the dollars once they get taken from me.
Yeah.
And some people are like, yeah, but what about, how do we build roads and how do we, I'm like, look, we're paying property tax, we're paying sales tax, there's excise taxes. If
Gas
you lower your
tax.
income tax, there's so much tax still going into the system for everything that you utilize.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. When I talk about people don't know how much they actually pay in taxes, I'm not talking about their income tax. I'm talking about all the other items. Even from the standpoint of you go get a hunting license. All these are government types
You
of
stay at a
fees
hotel.
and taxes. Rental cars.
Rental cars.
It doesn't matter. All of that stuff has,
Telephone bill.
has
Like, name it.
taxes
Yeah.
on it. It's insane how much we actually pay in taxes. I want to take just a break here, and I want to shift over to what I call rapid fire.
Okay.
I went really long with you, and I knew this was going to happen. Normally this happens in the first 5 minutes of the conversation, and we're 48 minutes into it right now. So
I'm long-winded. I'm sorry about
let me
that.
go through a little bit. No, it's not you
Okay.
long-winded. I love this concept. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to do a little rapid fire. This is over at our gun store that we have right there. Here we go. I got about 10 questions. These are going to be all over the board.
Okay.
All over the board. What we have here. All right. You can relive. You can relive one aspect of your childhood or teenage years. What is it and why? If you could relive one aspect of your childhood or teenage years, what is it and
Relive
why?
or rewrite?
I'll give you either one.
Okay.
Yeah, redo it. Let's say redo it. Yeah,
A
rewrite it.
redo is when
rewrite.
I was 3 years old. I got hit by a car.
Okay, at 3.
Yeah, 3. I was on my Hot Wheels. My mom had a rope holding it. She stopped to talk to her friend Mary. I got her to convince to drop the rope. I went across the street, got hit immediately. And man, that created years of me feeling like I watched my mom, who was pregnant with my sister, just bawl. I watched my dad show up in his coal mining outfit, you know, with coal
Black
dust on his
all over
face.
him, yeah.
Everybody's scared, and I was like, I got this really unhealthy belief at that time that if I'm not perfect, everybody gets in pain.
Oh, yeah.
And I just took on a lot of stress for a lot of years of my life from that.
It's amazing that it was 3, but that's what
3 years old, man.
came out of it, basically,
Yeah.
right? All right, you must eliminate one, but only one.
Okay.
Income taxes, which we just talked about. Careers of politicians, so you can't have a career politician anymore. Or government overregulation of business.
Man.
That's a tough
those
one.
are like all those are so good.
How about all 3? Income tax, career politicians, or government overregulation of business?
Income tax.
Income tax would
Yeah.
be the one you do. Let's see, next one would be choose one. You can dress like Donald Trump for a year, or have the hair and the orange for a year.
I guess I'm dressing with really long ties and baggy suits, man.
You got to keep your hair, man. You got to keep your. How long you been growing it out now?
I've had it this long since 2010.
2010?
Or around this long.
About a decade now, huh? All right, you've lost it all, and
Okay.
you have to bring back Garrett Gunderson's car care to survive. First thing you would do in that business would be what?
I'm bringing that business back, and I would create the most hilarious, cool vision that people want to come and get their car cleaned by anyone other than me, because I use all this stand-up comedy to get them to want to bring it to Garrett Gunderson's car care.
Because you do some stand-up comedy.
Do stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
and you know, there's plenty of things to make fun of when it comes to washing cars.
There you go. And all right, here we go. Next one. You got to choose one: investing in blue states or red states. Or don't care. Either one. You invest either.
I mean, I'm cool either way.
You invest either way?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an answer. All right, here we go. 2 more. Would you rather retract everything you wrote about in your book, Killing Sacred Cows, in order to land Jeff Bezos as a client, or advise Joe Biden on how to leave a legacy of wealth for his son Hunter? That's a tough one. That's a deep one. I haven't read that one before.
Well, because of the way I define wealth, I guess I'm going to have to advise Joe. I don't know if he'll remember anything I tell him at this stage, so I don't know if it really matters what I advise him on. You know, he'd probably forget. I'd have to show him the door.
Yeah.
And then give him 5 more crust white strips for those teeth,
Dude,
man.
pearly.
I
Pearly.
mean, I would just bring a fluorescent light to that meeting and just watch those teeth shine, man.
Just glow, man. All right, last one. Because giving up Jeff Bezos as a client would be tough, man. That's a.
I just feel like Killing Sacred Cows has a lot more impact than me helping Jeff Bezos.
True. That's true. I like that.
He's already got the tax game figured out.
Yeah,
so.
he's one of the top ones. The last one
and
here.
he's got plenty of wealth, so without my advice, I think he's going to do just fine. I have a feeling.
Last one. You got to choose one. Sharing a villa in Tuscany for a week with Nancy Pelosi, or road tripping cross country in Winnebago with Warren Buffett.
Yeah, I'll definitely go do the Warren Buffett thing, man.
That was the easy one,
Yeah,
Corey.
that was pretty easy.
That was the easy one, man. I love it, man. Let's talk about. Let me see. I want to move into. You've got a lot of cool insight on tax-free.
Yep.
And we've talked a little bit about your Roth kind of insight there. Talk to me a little bit about the Roth viewpoint of tax-free building it in a positive light, and some looks in the negative light, because a lot of people use Roth, especially the viewers here, use a lot of the Roth insights.
So the downside to the Roth is lack of cash flow.
Okay.
So if you're trying to create cash flowing assets, you know, like if you were to buy residential real estate in a Roth that you're doing buy and hold, you lose the value of depreciation. You lose the capital gain treatment, which allows for other tax-free exits
On the outside.
And the number one issue with it is it's still written into the IRS code by the government.
Right.
And I personally don't trust someone that's $24 trillion in debt. It's kind of like getting a business partner, and they're like, hey, here's the deal. We're in a partnership, but I can't really tell you what my cut's going to be in the future. It really depends on my economic circumstance.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're addicted to taxation like a heroin addict is addicted to heroin.
Probably
so
worse.
I know it's going to be bad, And now I'm in a partnership with them. They're like, trust me, it's going to be okay. We're going to keep this tax-free 30 years from now, Garrett, when you want to use this money. So that's my big issue with it.
Yeah.
What's the pro? Well, with a Roth IRA, if they make major changes, you can get your principal out tax-free anyway.
Right.
And you're only going to pay a 10% penalty for getting the rest of the earnings out, which I look at a 10% penalty like this. And I went to Catholic school, so the word penalty scares me. I always feel like I'm going to get hit with a ruler. But if I was willing to give you a loan at 10%, but I only charged you 10% the first year and at 0% the rest of the life of the loan, how much money do you want from me?
Say it again.
Okay, so I'm only going to charge you 10% the first year on the loan. The rest of the life of the loan is at 0% every year after.
I think I take as much as you could possibly give me.
So who cares about a 10% penalty? You cash it out if they're going to go negative on those because you have time with a big moving ship like the government to go, hey, I don't like what they're going to do. They might come invade this Roth IRA. I'm going to cash out. So
and you're saying just pay that 10% penalty.
Just pay the 10% penalty.
If you cashed out early.
So as long as they keep the rules the same, great.
Yeah.
Tax free, awesome. Use high leverage inside of a Roth IRA. Or you can put a little bit of money and get a big return. The Roth is the right vehicle for that, especially if it's got churn, meaning it's like you're earning and you're earning again and you're selling because it's like you did a fix and flip, let's say. You put $6,500 to secure a home inside a Roth IRA, and you turn around and make $60,000 of profit from that, you're not paying taxes on that. And because it's something that's sold within a year, you'd have to normally pay ordinary income. So I really like the Roth for that. I don't like it for cash flow, and I don't like the government's involved. You just have to be mindful, and you could cash it out early.
Yeah. I love I use the solo side, the solo 401k, and I love the side of the Roth, of course, and I love what you just talked about. I love the quick moving of money inside of it.
Right.
When I'm doing quick moving of money,
I call it churn, which maybe isn't the best term for it.
I get it.
Term for
Flipping it, turning it, whatever you want to call it, right? The movement side of it. I think inside of that, because you're getting out of the ordinary taxes and or on top of that, maybe capital gains taxes.
Right. Every time something's sold.
Every time something's sold. I love it on the turning stuff. I've always kind of struggled with the long-term play on the Roth, what you're talking about there. Because to me, it's like, well, I think there's other things I could do with the money, like you said on the outside, that would help my overall business versus just the long-term play inside the Roth. And I think it also goes back to a mindset of those that want to put something away and hold it for 45 more years until they retire. And I guess I'm nothing about that lifestyle.
No.
So for me on that side, it's hard for me to play that game, which I think a lot of Roth investors play it that way, where they play that long term. They're still using this, they're just changing the vehicle from a traditional IRA to the Roth side, but they're still playing that kind of, I think you called it the conservative game, where they kind of play the long term approach into the next 45 years inside of it. And what you said is very, very true about how the government could change this whole thing and flip it on its head, which they recently did. Right. To a certain degree, and for those that build out kind of estate planning legacy plans, which I do, I got hit.
Right.
Or my plan got hit, I should say, because that Roth
no more
IRA,
generation skipping.
Yeah, you can't skip down for generations.
Yep.
I can't pass it down anymore, which was tax free. Now they put a cap on it, which now I got to go back and I had to go back and restructure a lot of long term legacy planning here, and all over one vote, and it was
One vote.
oh yeah, we're gonna change all this, and I was blown away. I was furious.
And it didn't get a lot of press.
No, nobody picked it up. I mean, I was furious at that point.
Those changes are what concerned me.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Those changes can happen, and even though it's like a law that says, oh, you can skip generations and pass it down, you build it off of that
until we say you can't.
Until we need more money.
Yeah,
and we need more money.
They need a lot of money.
And I think that's what will happen eventually. Is on that Roth side. They're going to look at it from the tax side, right? And they're going to want that income coming from that tax component of it. We get into a lot of stuff about pensions and 401ks and so forth. I think to sum it up in one maybe phrase, I don't think either one of us believe in that kind of concept. Is that a fair assessment?
Right.
Of the giving your money to someone else, full control, and sit on it for 30 years?
No.
401k process.
You could get economically independent if you're deep in debt and struggling, not sure what to do within 10 years.
Yeah.
If you already have some assets, you can get there in 3 years.
Right.
There's a different methodology, which is recover cash. We talked about that. Engineer wealth, which is what is your monthly outgo? What assets are going to create that, cash flow? So that's the third thing, is all your accumulation assets, turn them into acceleration assets by triggering the cash flow now. Then fourth, scale business revenue. 92% of people worth $5 million or more own a business. So what can you do to grow that business and invest back into that so it actually creates and generates more revenue, because it's going to get much higher returns than blue chip companies that don't have as much growth potential. And then fifth, take care of yourself, make it count, enjoy life, invest back into yourself. You know, create your legacy in how you live, not just in what you leave behind. And if you do that, you can become economically independent super fast, not waiting for 30 years hoping it's going to.
Yeah, I think that's the part of that strategy, not your strategy, but the opposing strategy that I freaking hate the most, is this lifestyle of scarcity. I got friends that live that lifestyle and they won't even go out to eat. They're like, well, I'm like, hey, you guys want to go to grab dinner
Why
tonight?
have money?
And it's like, no, we're on a process. We're not gonna go out to eat.
Yeah.
I'm like, my God, I mean, don't you want to enjoy
the broke millionaire,
concept?
the miserable millionaire?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh God, it just irks me to any degree, and it irks me because so many people buy into it. So many people go down that road.
They limit their own value.
Yeah.
Because they're occupying so much of their time on reduction.
Yep.
Not value. Reduction.
Yeah.
So it limits.
I want to get your opinion on two things here.
Yeah.
Okay. You got a lot of good insight. Number one, I'm gonna give you both questions. Okay, but let's do them one at a time. One's gonna be, I want to get your input on what you think about building personal brands, as far as branding yourself. And number two, I want to talk to you about a word called diversification. Okay. Just real quick, I'm gonna hit both those topics with you. So let's go through. What's your insight, thoughts on kind of the world that we live in right now of personal brands, building a personal brands?
Yeah. So I feel like the future are, number one, small businesses.
Okay.
Right now, the stock market's so overvalued, we would never buy a small business at the price that those stocks are. But you can get small businesses for less than 1 times revenue.
Right.
Or you might be able to get them for 2 or 3 times revenue instead of like 20 plus. So the second thing is real estate. I don't love dealing with real estate, so I don't have as much of it, but if someone's really gonna, if that's part of their investor DNA, they build it like a business. And then third is intellectual property. So intellectual property is where we're talking about building a personal brand. The world today is being trained to get educated, not through the school systems, but through, you know, intellectual property. And so that's a viable business that can really exponentially have growth if people have that expertise and dial that in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wrote a book, that's an asset versus just looking at a piece of real estate as an asset.
Yeah.
And whether it's, you know, YouTube channel that I'm putting videos on 5 times a week, because I'm building intellectual property that can add value to people's lives, which is like, that's a real asset in business that I think too many people overlook and discount, because it's crazy the stuff that I'll look up to learn, and just someone that's, you know, got a video on it and I look at this huge subscribership, they're not even really good at speaking, they just have something that's interesting or something that's useful or something that people want to learn about. And so I think that's the way of the future.
I totally agree, man. I think the IP, intellectual property side of it, is massive in the let's say the more common things, books and so forth. But I think on the branding side of it, like you look at you and you mentioned it there on YouTube. It's like you know, we came from industrial age, information age, which was how I kind of got started in the business from just group with Kiyosaki actually, and a big pusher of information, and it was true. Dude, we had the information before kind of the internet was there, and as it was kind of growing through, and everything was kind of on, if you had information, you could sell it. If you had information, you could sell it. And to this day, that's still there, of course, but not to the same degree that it was in late 90s, early 2000s, when information was hard to get. With YouTube, social media, everything else, information became, like you just said, you go to YouTube and find pretty much anything you wanted to learn about, you could almost go find there. And then we kind of moved into what I kind of refer to as the influence age of life, which is kind of where I think we're all headed right now, into this influence. You find people that are creating an insane amount of wealth right now is because they have an insane amount of influence. They may not even have the information. Someone else may have the information, but they have influence, eyeballs, attention.
They can vet the information.
And that's where it moves to.
Yeah, bring it out. Totally.
I mean, it's like now you got to think about it, like take and this is maybe a bad example, but we all understand it. You take a Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner or whatever it is, dude, they're getting $1 million for one post on Instagram. Why? Influence. Because they have so much influence, that IP, and the IP was them themselves. So this is kind of old school IP, if you will, which is still happening, right?
Totally.
And then you have the new IP, which is like your brand, who you are, because that is you. And
things that you invest in, emotional intelligence, understanding of money, on communication and branding, like not just math and science that school's giving you, but not influential.
Yeah.
And that's a big
concepts.
distinction, right?
Hit me on diversification. Tell me your thoughts on it. When I say the word, what's your first thought?
Admission of ignorance. I don't know what's going to work. Let's just spread you thin.
Yeah.
You'll be in more things you know how to handle. You won't know what's going on with any of them.
Yeah.
But hopefully some of them do well when others don't. It's the ultimate conservative play not to lose strategy.
Yeah.
But it actually invites more risk because it's diversification.
Yeah.
We diversify into things further from our investor DNA, less focus, less control, further away from understanding, and ultimately we pay the price of limited returns and unfortunately complete losses in some situation. As much, but it still has a major implication. So diversification, and I mentioned Andrew Carnegie said put all his eggs in one basket and watch it like a hawk.
And I think people miss that point. Andrew Carnegie at one point was richer than Jeff Bezos was, like 3 times. You take his advice, which was to me like gold. Put all those eggs in one basket and just watch it constantly. Where today's day and age, taught by other people who are, in my opinion, always trying to get your money, basically. I'm going to call them financial advisors. And that's
Wall Street, banks, financial advisors.
And to me, I wish we could rename them to almost call them financial salesmen.
Salesmen, that's
because
exactly.
At the end of the day, that's what they are. And I'm not saying I'm
Good
against the
people,
concept.
but them is paying a commission
Yeah.
to do a transaction may or may not be right for you.
Yes.
It may or may not serve you.
Right.
It may not be the right timing for it, but it's what they know. It's what they're trained in.
But I think what happens is because they have the definition of advisor, that's a kind of a play on words. And so when someone who doesn't understand money, who has very little knowledge of it, comes to them, they take almost what they say as the gospel written truth,
right,
because of the word advisor. Where if you said that was a financial salesman, the people coming in would at least be a little bit more on guard and more questions.
Like, hey, we lost 8% today.
Yeah.
But I think, do toes grow back? I think they're going to be fine. Like, no, we know Wall Street, there's never been an inspiring movie about Wall Street. It's only about separating you from your money, really terrible, greedy intentions that are, basically it's legalized crime.
Yeah.
And yet that's what people are relying on for their future.
Yeah, for everything. Yeah, it's a crazy process, man. I could go on forever. Let me move into this one because I got to get some of your favorites here for the fans. Fans love to get to know you, so I got some Gunderson stuff happening. So I did a little research on you. Give me some information. What's happening right here?
I don't know why I have my top button and that I have some necklace on, but. Yeah, that haircut was, I think it was a perm, to be honest.
Dude, that's baller status.
I think it was a perm that it gave it
all that body. What year was that? Do you know what years that was?
I believe that was 7th grade. So we're talking, in the 80s. It's late 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you
like
were
maybe early 90s.
You were making it rain. Did you have a lot of girls chase you at that time frame?
Look, man, But
I'm sure you're.
I'm mostly nose and hair in that picture when I look at it. Mostly nose and hair.
Let me see what else I got here for you. It was some background checks. We got this one right here.
Oh yeah, basketball. There we go.
What do you got going on? What year was, or what grade were you here? Do you know? Junior high? Was this middle school or high school?
That year is that's my junior year. I'd blown out my knee playing basketball that summer. And I spent a lot of time on the bench because they just didn't think that I was that good with a blown out knee. So that's maybe why I look so angry in that picture. I'm on my knee in the front, the third one there, yeah. So
You're
that's
hot, man.
Year.
Yeah.
Not a good year.
Now, if I understand where you grew up.
You just got issued a basketball, you play on the team.
Yeah. Back to some old school stuff there. Let me go into called the favorites here.
Okay.
And I got a handful of questions here we'll go through. Who is your favorite influencer that you follow, or dead or alive, doesn't matter, but do you have a favorite influencer that you kind of follow, look up to?
That I'm listening to most right now?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, this is a strange answer, but out of it about 12 times now. He's written some pretty deep books. He's dead now, but I just love his material.
Yeah, David Hawkins. Favorite social media platform that you use?
YouTube.
YouTube's your jam?
Yeah, I'm posting 5 videos a week, and 98% of the comments are awesome, nice.
Yeah.
Usually when people don't like me, it's a hair and beard thing, or they're a Dave Ramsey fan and they're angry. So I actually comment on almost every post. If I know it, I'm not sure what they're talking about, so I don't post there. Even if they're negative, you know, maybe smart ass every now and again.
A little
but
jab
YouTube,
here and there.
YouTube for me.
A couple things here. Number one, I want you to get a YouTube channel. We'll put it up for you right here. But what is the YouTube channel?
It's Garrett.live in your internet browser will take you there, or it's youtube.com/Garrett Gunderson TV.
So I'm going to say the easy one to say is Garrett.live.
Yep.
In the browser.
In the browser, will take you there.
Google Chrome. Yep. And then we got on YouTube. In my opinion, I think YouTube is kind of going to be the wave of social media moving forward to a lot of the degree there. So we're going big into YouTube right now as well. It came with the YouTube Stories. Because it's the only one that actually pay you for your content and time.
Someone post. Yeah, and I'll actually comment back.
And then you mentioned the comment of the haters. Sometimes we'll post stuff, right? And that happens to everybody. I just want to get I'll ask a lot. You got any thought on them?
Yeah, I think that first off, I come with some love and compassion because I think they don't feel very powerful in the world. And to change their opinion, and that's cool because I have a pretty good opinion of myself at this point. Yeah.
It's amazing how many kind of keyboard warriors are out there that it's like they troll to find hate. I think I think what you're saying, that there's a deep issue. They're like, why would you do that? And
they feel unheard. They feel unlovable.
To me, there's always something
frustrated
behind the scenes there. And I'm sometimes, I mean, I'm human. I'm like, ouch, man, that one kind of stung a little bit, whatever their comment was. But I always kind of have that empathy feel, like, man, whatever you're going through, bro, I would hate to be in that situation to do that. And the other great advice I got from somebody was, it was Sean Whalen, mutual friend there.
Yeah.
Sean Whalen, he was talking about, he said, if you're commenting on my post, he said, I'm already between your ears. And he said, I love to live right there. Because he said, if you're willing to go comment
of hate.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know how YouTube works, but you can just not come to this channel. Like, it's totally up to you, man. Like, it's cool. I'm fine with it.
I love it, man. Favorite holiday?
For me, it's Christmas because of this ridiculous family tradition called the Christmas roast.
Okay.
We draw names or sometimes rig it where you get to pick a name and you get to relentlessly roast that person in our family. So the kids are now in on it every year. We laugh hysterically, like full-on video production. 12-minute videos sometimes.
Use the Augusta rule.
It is so epically fun.
I love that, man.
I look forward to that more.
So Christmas is your jam because
Christmas.
of the roast. And I thought roast was going to be like food, but because Italian and the spreads you guys
we definitely go all out on Christmas Eve dinner.
But the roast is the people.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. We have a cabin that we went in the snow, and it was great. Because
Christmas, this should be a good one for you.
Sappy side of me, It's a Wonderful Life still gets me. Like, I sent him a text today. I'm like, you have a great sense of humor. I think I adopted that from you, and you also get too emotional during commercials and movies. And I adopted that too, Dad. I really. But I do like a lot of the Christmas classics. Like I like Story. I watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation again this year. I like Elf. Elf is killer. I mean, there's some good Christmas jams. I'm in on them.
I love them, dude. It's a Wonderful Life. You like a couple people have mentioned it, and that's the one that they actually talk the banking in it.
I mean, it's hard not to say Dave Chappelle. He's epic, and I saw him in August, and he did 30 of the funniest minutes that I've ever seen. And I watched him right after he went to South Africa and turned down Chappelle's show, and I fell out of my at the same time is so hilarious. We saw him. She was laughing so hard. So yeah, those are my two.
Those are good, man.
Yeah.
Chappelle is like the leader to me, like a pioneer of that whole industry.
Do it his way. He's not on social media at all. He sold out that show at USANA Amphitheater with 18,000 people in 3 weeks' notice.
It's just nuts, man. A lot of TV appearances, featured in also magazines, Forbes, all kinds of places. What's been your favorite either TV or magazine appearance you've done?
When I was on Squawk on the Street for CNBC, because they kicked me off. They just cut to commercial early because it was 2008, it was December 24th, and they said, "What do you think about the stock market?" Not read my
no one did research.
And the British dude's eyes got so big, and I was just on. Watch it back because all I saw was a camera.
Yeah.
But that was my favorite because you're going to get this what context. I just tell it how I feel it.
I love it, dude. So they just dropped you right there.
Dropped me.
That is
great. The producer never responded. There was nothing. Yeah.
Just dead silence from
I remember
there
I did this show, Good Money, on ABC.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's around anymore, but the first episode I ever did was in New York.
Okay.
And I was nervous because there were so many cameras and like the host isn't there and I'm asking the guy setting him up, I'm like, which camera do I look at? And he tells me, but I couldn't really hear him ask the second time. He goes, it's this effing camera, dude. And I'm like, okay, I'm just nervous. I'm trying to chill out. But the first time they thought I was joking with some of my advice. I said, stop funding your retirement plan.
Yeah.
Business owners should give their employees a raise during the recession that are the high quality employees to let them know that you're in this and just use your retirement funds to do it. And they thought it was crazy. By the 13th time I was on the show, they were like, well, you know what I always say, invest in yourself. And I was like, hey, I don't know who else is watching, but I changed the host's opinion, so I felt pretty good about that.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to go deep into it. This is a incredible book. I read your other book. This is a bestseller book.
Yep.
I read your book, What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Yep.
Which is, I thought, a tremendous book, a lot about money. And then you have this book as well. Tell me a little bit about what the Rockefellers do.
Okay, so hey, we're seeing your ads online and you're profiting off the Rockefeller's name.
Last name, sure.
And one of their CPAs of ours, and I did a little bit of research with her. So they said, look, we know the content inside. We're to change anything. We just want to stop competing with you on the name because we have our own financial firm.
Right.
And so version 2 is now What Would Billionaires Do? Billionairesmethod.com is where you can check that book out. But yeah, that's why the name is now changed. Not much different on the interior content at this point.
I highly enjoyed it. I just read it maybe a year and a half ago. The website was
Billionairesmethod.com.
And then you got this right here, which came out before.
Yeah.
A little bit about that one.
Hey, one, man, like half the time when people introduce that book that don't know me well, they call it Killing Scared Crows. And I'm always like, that just sounds mean. Like, what would the book be about anyway?
Why would I kill that?
Like, why, is it a scarecrow or scared crows? I don't know. But yeah, Killing Sacred Cows is about these 9 financial myths that are very subtle, hard to detect. Steps and mistakes. It's kind of like a book about permission to succeed. Identify what's holding them back.
Last thing I want to get here from you is I'm absolutely excited to see your answer.
All right.
And it is right. We'll put it there. Give me that John Hancock, and then let's talk about it together.
And I'm writing what it is and signing it.
Yeah, write it inside. Write it on the orange line. Just the answer. Sign it below.
I mean, can I do it a second time? That's the real question.
Here we go. From the money man himself, this is Garrett Gunderson. Money is value. Money is I believe it's the first time we got that answer from you, from anybody. So let's talk about it real quick. What is money is value? What does that mean?
Moment, a snapshot in time. It's this man-made efficient tool of exchange. It just represents value created in the past, and then we store that value.
Yeah.
And money doesn't dictate what we're capable of doing. It doesn't dictate our destiny or our ability. Value creation. So the more value we add, the more money chases that value and follows it. So if you want more money, it's about value, because money represents value.
I love that, man. And the more, and especially in today's current kind of industries that we're in right now, value is everything. Lead with always value. How can I provide value? How can I provide value? The whole purpose of the
You tell me, like, just stick to value.
Yeah.
Don't worry about promoting anything. We just want to add value. Like, we'll put your
value, right? And you were the same way. Like, you came in with value, right? The whole point. Money will chase value. Always has. Always has. And I love how you use the terminology. Love the concept about how money is energy, and in your bank account is just stored energy. Meaning money had to have something was moved, created, somebody worked, and money was exchanged. And now really money is just a form of energy. And now you're storing that energy, and when you want to spend it.
Inflation's annoying.
Yeah.
Because when they just add more money without people, they lower the value of what's already been created. Yeah, it's like, it'd be like you're playing a basketball game.
Yep.
And they just keep adding points to the and that's where, exactly.
You're devaluing someone who worked, let's just say 20 years ago, got money, energy, they exchanged their life, money, which is now energy, because energy is what they spent, and now you're diluting, destroying someone's entire.
Devaluing it.
Yeah. I could have a conversation with you for an hour. I think me and you are on the same. So many things when it comes to money. We're going to jump on some more interviews. I'm going to jump in my office, and we're going to get some of the fun, crazy stuff. And but last thing I want to do, I want to give you the platform. You deliver so much value and content. What would the viewer?
Pay yourself first. Automation, sweep account, set up a separate account. Find money that can fund that without destroying or decimating your lifestyle. Invest back into yourself always, not just once, not just a couple times. It's like, it's like going to the gym. You got to keep going or else you lose the result. And vision is the thing in the game to play. How do you create such a compelling and make money a byproduct of that? So create cash flow to longer reason or excuse why they do or don't. Consideration. It's just a consideration. You're financially free. When people are financially free, value is first and foremost. Cost is the economic impact. Pay. But if we start with value first, cost second, and price, financially free. When we're financially free, we focus on value for others. When we focus on value for others, we add more value. As we add more value, money chases that value, ends up in our pockets, and we actually make a bigger impact on the world. We've got the people in the world to solve the major problems that we have. They've got to get right with money, otherwise it collapses it down. It needs to become an asset and a fuel rather than a foe, and the world's transformed. So,
I love it,
build the life you love.
So deep, so information, just from a broad stroke from Garrett, you can go to, can they go to GarrettGunderson.com, or you better go to wealthfactory.com?
Yeah, wealthfactory.com is probably the best place. GarrettGunderson.com.
Speaker as well, if you guys wanted some, especially if you wanted to push the envelope on some stuff on the financial world. Great speaker. So you can follow us next week on the Money Is Show.